set sail in a double-hulled canoe. No compass, no map, no instruments. Around you, nothing but the endless Pacific. Your only guides, the stars overhead, the waves beneath, the flight of birds at dusk, and generations of memory carried in your mind. Could you make it home with just those? This isn't a romantic fantasy, it's historical fact. Long before satellites or sextants, ancient navigators crossed entire oceans with astonishing precision. They tracked constellations, measured the sun's arc, read the rhythm of swells, and interpreted the signs of clouds, currents, and marine life. Some could sense land days before it appeared, without ever laying eyes on it. And their techniques weren't just effective, they're being studied today by sailors, survival experts, and even space agencies. In this episode of Armchair Archaeology, we're retracing the forgotten art of ancient navigation. From the star watchers of Mesopotamia to the wave readers of Polynesia, we'll uncover how humans once explored the world with nothing but nature as their compass. Stay with us, because by the end, you'll hear about a voyage that shocked modern science. Before we start our journey, make sure to subscribe to Armchair Archaeology. We uncover the hidden stories, technologies, and mysteries that shaped our world. So if you're into ancient knowledge with a twist of wonder, you're in the right place. For ancient sailors, the night sky wasn't just a canvas of myths, it was a living map. Long before magnetic compasses were invented, navigators oriented themselves by tracking the predictable paths of stars across the heavens. And remarkably, versions of this skill are still taught to naval officers and long-distance sailors today. In the Northern Hemisphere, Polaris, the North Star, was a reliable guide. It held steady near true north, and its height above the horizon helped estimate latitude. In the Southern Hemisphere, where Polaris isn't visible, navigators used the Southern Cross and its relationship to the South Celestial Pole to find direction. But in the Pacific, navigation by stars reached a level of complexity few imagined. Polynesian wayfinders memorized star paths, sequences of rising and setting stars tied to specific ocean routes. Each star acted like a stepping stone, guiding the canoe through the night. These star paths formed mental highways across the ocean, memorized, recited, and relied on like nautical GPS. As one star set, the next aligned with a new heading. This method allowed for course corrections mid-voyage, all from memory. The constellations weren't chosen randomly. Each had proven reliability and was embedded in tradition, taught through chants, rituals, and real-time apprenticeship at sea. A master navigator might memorize over 150 stars, not from scrolls or diagrams, but through repetition, rhythm, and the lived experience of countless voyages. That depth of knowledge didn't just survive, it shaped entire cultures. In many Pacific societies, the stars weren't distant objects, they were familiar companions, consulted nightly, trusted absolutely. And while we often speak of early astronomy as something abstract or academic, for these seafarers, it was a daily, embodied necessity. Every night, sky was a map that stretched not just across space, but across generations, etched in rhythm, memory, and starlight. When night gave way to day, ancient navigators didn't lose their sense of direction. They simply shifted their gaze. The sun, with its steady arc across the sky, became their daytime compass and clock. It wasn't just about knowing east from west. The sun offered a surprisingly accurate way to gauge latitude, estimate time, and even predict seasonal weather. By observing where the sun rose and set along the horizon, sailors could orient themselves throughout the year. At solar noon, when the sun reached its highest point, they watched its height above the horizon to estimate how far north or south they had traveled. But what if they didn't have tools? To aid their observations, early navigators used simple tools like gnomons and shadow sticks. These vertical poles cast shadows that moved with the sun's position, offering a kind of analog GPS. Long before the invention of sundials, such techniques were likely used by Egyptian and Babylonian sailors to mark time and direction, even while underway. But across the Pacific, solar awareness became deeply embodied. Navigators didn't always need tools. They learned to track the sun by feel, its warmth on the skin, its angle in the sky, and even the color of the ocean light. On islands near the equator, they could detect when the sun passed directly overhead by watching shadows vanish completely. That brief moment, when no shadow was cast at all, told them exactly where they were. Today, solar positioning remains crucial in fields from survival training to spaceflight trajectory planning. But for ancient mariners, it was something more intimate, an ever-present companion in the sky, as constant as the sea itself. The sun didn't just mark time, it told them who they were, where they stood, and how far they had left to go. Before maps were drawn and compasses spun, wind carved the first pathways across the sea. It shaped not only the speed and direction of travel, but the very possibility of long-distance navigation. To those who studied its rhythms, wind was more than weather. It was a guide. In the Indian Ocean, monsoon winds created a seasonal rhythm that powered trade between East Africa, Arabia, and South Asia for thousands of years. Sailors set out with the summer winds and returned with the winter shift, building one of the most reliable and enduring trade systems in the ancient world. Across the Pacific, the steady trade winds, blowing westward near the equator, helped Polynesian voyagers reach distant archipelagos. But returning against the wind, known as sailing to windward, required advanced strategies. Navigators read subtle shifts in air pressure, cloud formations, and sea spray to find slivers of favorable wind. Combined with the flexible design of their canoes, they turned headwinds into manageable currents. Wind wasn't just about movement, it was timing, survival, and knowing when not to sail. In the Mediterranean, seafarers like the Phoenicians and Greeks classified regional winds and used them to time their journeys. They knew when to travel, when to wait, and how to interpret wind changes as signals of coastal proximity or coming storms. Experienced sailors could sometimes sense wind changes days ahead by the shape of the clouds, the behavior of birds, or a sudden dryness in the breeze. This was not mysticism. It was observation, honed into instinct. Today, we rely on satellites to model these same systems, but the winds themselves haven't changed. The knowledge once passed from deck to deck, by word and weather alone, still shapes how we understand the atmosphere. Ancient wind reading wasn't just survival, it was strategy, science, and a kind of listening few of us still practice. If this fascinates you, you'll love our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World. From lost cities to ancient tech that still puzzles scientists. It's packed with the kind of deep dive knowledge you won't find in school. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. The ocean speaks in patterns, not words, and in some of the world's most remote island cultures, navigators learn to listen with their entire bodies. In the Pacific, particularly among Polynesian and Micronesian voyagers, the sea itself became a map, read not by sight, but by sensation. Swells travel across vast distances, created by storms far beyond the horizon. These waves arrive in rhythmic sets, and each set holds clues about where it came from. Navigators learn to distinguish between different swell directions, feeling how they struck the canoe at varying angles. Some swells were long and deep, signaling distant storms. Others were short and choppy, reflecting local winds or bouncing off nearby islands. When multiple wave systems overlapped, they created complex interference patterns, ripples and vibrations that only the most experienced sailors could interpret. By lying prone in the canoe, a navigator could feel these patterns through chest, hips, and limbs, tuning into a language spoken through motion. Some were able to track as many as 5 distinct swell directions simultaneously, using them to triangulate their position in open ocean. Without sight of land, stars, or sun, they could still orient themselves, adjusting course based solely on memory and feel. That level of sensitivity wasn't unusual, it was expected. These skills weren't born of luck. They were trained, drilled, and passed down with the rigor of science. In the Marshall Islands, knowledge of wave dynamics was formalized into teaching tools like stick charts. These abstract diagrams represented how swells curved around islands and intersected across known routes. In a world increasingly dominated by visual screens and external devices, this kind of embodied navigation offers a powerful reminder. Deep knowledge doesn't always look like data. Sometimes it lives in muscle memory, in rhythm, in stillness, and in the quiet conversation between a wooden hull and a moving sea. Not every sign of land comes from the sky or sea itself. Some of the most reliable clues drifted on the wind, circled overhead, or shimmered in subtle changes to the water. For ancient navigators, the natural world offered a constellation of earthly indicators, if you knew how to see them. Seabirds were among the most trusted companions. Species like frigatebirds and terns rarely venture more than 40 or 50 miles from shore. At dawn and dusk, their flight patterns became navigational cues. Birds flying out to sea in the morning and returning in the evening often pointed directly to land. Navigators learned to read their behavior not as background, but as moving signposts across the sky. One glance at a seabird's flight could mean the difference between landfall and drifting off course. Clouds, too, revealed hidden geography. Islands, especially large ones, create microclimates that cause certain cloud formations to gather overhead, even when land was still well below the horizon. An experienced sailor could spot these stationary cloud banks and adjust course accordingly. Floating vegetation, driftwood, pumice, and even flocks of feeding fish often appeared near coastal waters. And then there was the water itself. As sailors approached shallower areas, they noticed shifts in color, from dark indigo to turquoise, signaling reefs, lagoons, or sandbars ahead. In the Marshall Islands, some navigators even encoded bird behavior into oral chants that marked time, distance, and direction. These weren't stories. They were practical, living guides to navigation, passed down with the same care as star paths or swell charts. Today, ecologists and climate scientists are relearning how to interpret these same natural signs as indicators of environmental change. But for ancient mariners, they were immediate and life-saving. To cross open water without tools was never blind luck. It was attention, practiced like an art, until even the clouds could speak, and birds became messengers of home. What do you think? Could you find land just by watching birds or clouds? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear what navigation methods surprised you the most. When familiar markers faded from view, when the stars were hidden, the wind unpredictable, and birds nowhere to be seen, ancient sailors relied on a quieter method. This was dead reckoning, the art of calculating where you are based on where you've been. It sounds simple. Track your speed, direction, and time, then project your current position. But on an open ocean, with no landmarks, even small errors could compound into major miscalculations. That's why ancient navigators treated dead reckoning as a disciplined skill, refined through experience. To estimate speed, some used knotted ropes tossed overboard and timed with a water clock or sand glass. The number of knots pulled out during a set interval gave rise to our modern nautical speed unit, knots. Yes, that's where the term knots actually comes from. Combined with a sense of heading, whether from stars, sun, or wind, and a reliable awareness of time, sailors could mentally map their journey mile by mile. Vikings were known for combining dead reckoning with environmental cues. They used the sun's angle when it was visible, but may have also employed sunstones, crystals that polarize light and reveal the sun's position even through heavy clouds or fog. Modern researchers have tested this and confirmed it works, adding scientific weight to a method once dismissed as legend. This approach wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. For short distances or as a backup when other methods failed, dead reckoning often kept sailors on track. In skilled hands, it became second nature, an internal logbook updated in real time. Even today, pilots and navigators are taught to use dead reckoning as a last resort when digital systems fail. Because when all else goes dark, your sense of time, speed, and bearing may be the only map you have left. Some of the most advanced navigation systems in history were never written down. They weren't drawn on parchment or etched into stone. They were memorized, sung, and passed from one generation to the next through story, ritual, and repetition. For many cultures, the mind itself was the map. In the Pacific Islands, navigators trained from a young age to absorb vast amounts of information: star paths, wave patterns, wind shifts, distances, and seasonal changes, all encoded into charts and oral lessons. They studied stick charts, frameworks of palm ribs and shells, used not as onboard tools, but as teaching devices. These charts represented wave interference patterns, island positions, and current flows. But once a navigator set sail, the chart stayed on land. Everything had to be remembered. In the Marshall Islands, each chart was unique to its maker. It reflected a personal understanding of how the ocean behaved between specific islands. The charts themselves were abstract, not literal maps, but memory aids layered with meaning. Other cultures developed their own cognitive mapping systems. Norse sailors remembered coastal features, wind patterns, and sailing times through oral sagas. West African navigators used rhythm and drum patterns to recall sequences of travel across river and sea. These weren't improvisations. They were memory systems with rules, consistency, and generational testing. In some traditions, only one person per generation was entrusted with the full body of navigational knowledge. That individual was trained for years to become a living archive, the sole keeper of the routes, seasons, hazards, and stars that defined the people's relationship to the ocean. This wasn't folklore. It was science encoded in story, an oral technology just as disciplined and effective as any chart or compass. And it reminds us that memory, when cultivated deeply, can be one of humanity's most powerful tools for wayfinding. Want to explore more mysteries like this? Our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World, dives into how ancient knowledge was preserved through memory, symbols, and structures that still baffle researchers today. Grab your copy in the pinned comment. Navigation was only half the equation. The other half was the vessel itself. Ancient mariners didn't just build boats, they engineered them with precision, shaping every detail to match the demands of long-distance exploration. The result wasn't primitive transport, it was sophisticated maritime technology. In the Pacific, Polynesians designed double-hulled voyaging canoes capable of carrying dozens of people, along with supplies for weeks at sea. These vessels were fast, stable, and exceptionally seaworthy. Their distinctive crab-claw sails could be adjusted for speed or control, and the twin hulls offered balance in heavy swell. Some could travel over 2,000 miles without a single stop, and they did, long before Europe ever touched the open ocean. Outriggers were another breakthrough. used throughout Oceania and Southeast Asia. These lateral supports kept narrow canoes upright in turbulent water, allowing for sleek, agile designs that could tack against the wind and maneuver through reefs and surf with ease. Elsewhere, Viking longships were built for speed and versatility. Their shallow draft let them cross oceans and navigate rivers without pause, and their flexible hulls absorbed wave impact rather than resisting it. In the Mediterranean, shipwrights optimized hull shape and sail placement to handle the region's shifting winds and busy ports. Every design element had purpose. Keels were deepened for better tracking. Hulls were shaped to ride atop waves rather than plow through them. Sails evolved to catch changing winds from different angles. These weren't accidents. They were the product of experimentation, observation, and refinement over generations. Today, modern naval architects still study these ancient vessels for their balance of efficiency, durability, and adaptability. Because long before computers and CAD models, people were building watercraft that could read the sea and respond to it like an extension of the sailor's own body. For centuries, historians debated just how far ancient sailors could travel. Without written records, many claims of early oceanic exploration were dismissed as myth. But then, the sea began giving up its secrets, layered in silt, sealed in coral, and buried beneath centuries of salt. One of the most astonishing finds was the Uluburun shipwreck, discovered off the coast of modern-day Turkey. Dated to the 14th century BCE, the vessel was small, but its cargo told a vast story. Copper from Cyprus, tin from Central Europe, glass from Mesopotamia, ivory from Africa, and a scarab inscribed with the name of Egyptian queen Nefertiti. One sunken ship connected at least 7 ancient civilizations, proving not only contact, but regular long-distance trade across sea routes once thought impossible. In Scandinavia, Viking longships recovered from burial mounds confirmed what the sagas had claimed. These weren't coastal raiders, they were ocean-going explorers. Artifacts and ruins at Lance O Meadows in Newfoundland show that Norse sailors reached North America around the year 1000 CE, navigating the North Atlantic centuries before Columbus. Roman amphora have turned up along the Indian coastline, pointing to well-established maritime trade with the East. In Southeast Asia, the remains of massive Chinese junks tell of expeditions reaching the coasts of Africa during the Ming dynasty. Still not convinced? Today's researchers have tested these theories in the water, and today, experimental archaeologists are retracing these ancient journeys, building replica ships and sailing traditional routes using only the tools and techniques of the past. Again and again, the results confirm what the wrecks already suggest. These voyages weren't accidental. They were deliberate, skilled, and strategic. Each shipwreck is a fragment of a lost story, evidence that ancient mariners didn't just hug coastlines. They crossed thresholds, linked cultures, and rewrote the map of the ancient world. If you're enjoying this voyage, consider leaving a super thanks. It helps support more deep dives like this and tells us you value these lost stories as much as we do. Ancient navigation may seem like a lost art, but traces of it still shape how we travel today. The tools are digital now, the screens are bright, but at their core, many modern techniques echo the same principles early sailors once trusted with their lives. Celestial navigation, for instance, remains a vital backup skill for open ocean sailors and military officers. Using the sun, moon, and stars to determine position is not just tradition, it's insurance. In 2015, the US Navy reinstated celestial navigation training in response to concerns over cybersecurity threats to GPS. If satellites are ever jammed or disabled, the stars will still be there, unspoofable, unhackable, and constant. Survival schools around the world continue to teach students how to read the sky, sense wind shifts, and watch bird flight and cloud patterns to find direction. These methods, once passed orally in chants and ritual, now appear in handbooks and emergency protocols. The wisdom of ancient seafarers has become part of modern resilience training. But perhaps the most inspiring legacy is cultural. Across the Pacific, traditional navigation is undergoing a powerful revival. The Polynesian Voyaging Society, among others, trains new wayfinders to cross entire ocean basins without instruments, guided only by memory, observation, and ancestral knowledge. These journeys aren't recreations, they're acts of continuity, cultural reclamation, and scientific validation. In a world increasingly driven by automation, these navigators remind us of what humans are still capable of without a screen. Ancient navigation wasn't primitive, it was perceptive, embodied, and astonishingly accurate. The compasses may have changed, the oceans have not. And for those who still look upward or inward, the ancient pathways remain, waiting to be followed once more. Across thousands of years and countless miles of open sea, ancient navigators mastered the art of movement without maps, compasses, or instruments. They sailed by sky and swell, bird and breeze, memory and instinct. And through it all, they trusted the natural world to show them the way. Their techniques were not mystical. They were observant, practiced, and deeply sophisticated. These weren't random guesses across the water. They were intentional, intergenerational systems of knowledge that made possible everything from trade and migration to storytelling and survival. And now, as promised at the start of this journey, here's the extraordinary modern voyage that proved just how real and powerful those traditions are. In 1976, a traditional Polynesian canoe named Hokulea set sail from Hawaii to Tahiti. No GPS, no compass, no modern instruments. The navigator, Mau Piailug of Micronesia, guided the crew using only traditional wayfinding techniques, reading stars, feeling swells, watching birds, tracking clouds. After more than 2,500 miles of open ocean, they landed precisely on target. That journey stunned skeptics and sparked a global revival of indigenous navigation. Mau's methods were later studied by scientists, including researchers at NASA, who saw in his skill a model for how humans might one day navigate deep space without technological aid. What we often dismiss as ancient wisdom is often something far more enduring, a different kind of science, encoded in bodies, practiced through experience, and refined over centuries. Thank you for sailing with us through this story of human ingenuity and cosmic guidance. Inspired by the way ancient wisdom still speaks across time? Subscribe to Armchair Archaeology and comment below. What forgotten journey should we chart next? Don't forget to like and ring the bell, because the past still holds many secrets waiting to be discovered. And if you want to keep exploring, don't miss our ebook Secrets of the Ancient World. It's like having your own time machine, packed with ancient mysteries, advanced technologies, and forgotten civilizations. Links in the pinned comment. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and let the stars keep guiding your curiosity forward.